Hello and welcome back to the Agribusiness Academy podcast. Today I'm joined by Guatam Gupta, CEO of NatureBox, a food tech pioneer, and we'll hear all about their business model shortly, and by Dr. Vijayender Nalla from Agribusiness Academy. Hello to you both.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi,
we're very
thanks,
pleased.
Tom.
Very pleased to have you both with us. Vijay, perhaps I could just quickly start with you, as I always do in these podcasts, just to give your perspective on why NatureBox was a kind of ideal company to come and speak to us today and understand more about what they're doing.
Yeah, sure, Tom. So NatureBox is a very interesting business for me. I've been following it since 2013. It's one of the I felt that at that time, the nutrition, health and wellness aspects with respect to food was very popular, or getting very popular, or just getting popular. And NatureBox inspired me a lot. I worked a bit with the subscription snacking model myself in Europe, and I was just we learned a few lessons here, and then I could see that NatureBox has been making progress, and I'm sure there are quite some interesting lessons to learn from them, and for our audience that are interested to develop food tech. So that's how the whole interest came. But I've been nudging Gautam for a while now, but finally we managed to get his attention. Thanks, Gautam.
Of course, my pleasure.
Great. So as Vijay says, you're very much a pioneer within this concept of healthy snacking. Could you tell us a little bit about the journey and some of the experiences you've had over that period?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, a real pleasure to be with you on this, and appreciate the opportunity to share our story. I started NatureBox with a friend of mine from college. We didn't start the business in college or even shortly after college. The two of us kind of went our separate ways for a number of years, but had stayed in touch. And we both really had a passion around food. And for me, I had a passion around healthy snacking. And the reason for that was, up until the age of 18, I really struggled with obesity. I had very, very bad eating habits growing up, ate a lot of junk food, but luckily, right before going off to college, I learned about nutrition and was able to lose 70 pounds in 6 months through diet and exercise. And so for me, this idea of healthy snacking, or really healthy eating and nutrition, was always a personal passion. I had kind of seen in my own diet how most snacks people consume are junk food. They're empty calories. They really don't give you any amount of nutritional value. And so that was an interesting sort of problem, from my standpoint, an interesting problem to go and solve. And the first thing that we did when we were kind of thinking about starting this business is, we sort of said, well, hey, we like this idea of healthy snacking, but will anyone else think this is interesting? And so we actually put a website up. We bought the domain naturebox.com. We put a website up and decided to test this idea. So we actually had kind of a photo of what we thought NatureBox could look like. It was all pretty much vaporware. It was all Photoshop. It was all stuff that we were kind of doing. There wasn't a real product. It was all stuff that we were sort of creating on the fly. And lo and behold, after a weekend of having this website live, we actually had 100 people come and pay us for their first NatureBox. And so that was a really amazing time. It was a sort of, it was a thrilling moment to look and see that 100 people that, we didn't know any of these people. They weren't like friends and family. They were totally random people, decided to actually pay us, $25 for their first NatureBox. But, quickly after the moment of exhilaration came the moment of fear. Because we then realized that we had just sold 100 boxes of product that we don't have and we don't even know how to make. And so that's actually how, we started the business and how kind of NatureBox came to be.
So, and what year did you say that was, sorry?
That was at the end of 2011. We were working on this concept over nights and weekends. So it still wasn't a company. We were just kind of doing this in our spare time.
Right. So this is very much the kind of even the start of any kind of subscription model type elements, let alone
Yeah.
being a pioneer within the food tech space.
Definitely, definitely. And I think, along the way, we were always kind of pioneers, doing things a bit differently. So you're right to say that we were kind of one of the first subscription companies. And, really, we were one of the first subscription companies that built our own brand, right? So it wasn't that any of the products, we weren't sending people brands that you could just go buy in the grocery store. It was all NatureBox product. And so that was unique. And then we were, one of the first brands that actually allowed you to customize the box that you were receiving. So you could actually change the products that you got every single month. And that was really unique relative to, kind of the subscription box experience at the time.
And could you maybe tell us about the last few years and how is the business model kind of the same as you started, or how's that evolved?
Well, when we started the company, we knew that we never wanted to be just a subscription business. We really were building a brand. And so we actually, even from day one, we thought that eventually you would be able to buy NatureBox products online and offline. And so really over the last few years, I'd say what's the biggest change to our business has been the evolution of that part of the model. Now, if you look at NatureBox as a brand, you can buy the product online, and you can either buy on a subscription basis or on a non-subscription basis, or you can buy the product offline. And that could be through stores like Target and Costco and places like that. It also, we have a growing part of our business that is selling to offices, because many offices like to provide snacks for their employees. And so that's another channel that we operate in. And so I'd say probably the biggest evolution is when we started, the company was more known as a subscription business, and that was really part of the value proposition, was this kind of notion of set it and forget it. But I'd say now the value proposition is very much about the quality of the product, and the fact that you can buy that product through multiple channels and multiple different ways.
And I guess I was going to kind of come on to the value proposition. So it's great that you've kind of touched on them already. Could you just to pick up on something you described in there? Could you talk to us a little bit about your ingredients and how that kind of how they play into the products that you sell?
Definitely. So from day one, we had always kind of had this belief that you could make healthy and delicious products. We at the end of the day, I think as we think about the product and the brand, we're not trying to be the very healthy, the best, the healthiest product that you can possibly eat. We're not trying to compete with, fruit or nuts, in and of themselves, right? We're trying to create products that you would eat instead of traditional junk food, right? And so for us, it's been very, very important to have healthy products that taste great, and we don't sacrifice on taste. So I'd say that's core to the value proposition. That's sort of the first and foremost of the value proposition. And then behind that is the ability to discover products that you didn't know even existed, right? And so the way that we make that come alive is we try, there's really two things that we do that I'd say are unique. The first is we try to use bold flavors that you can't just find in the grocery store. And so an example of this could be our sriracha roasted cashews. It's a really spicy spicy sriracha flavor. And so it's not something that you're going to find in the grocery store, but it's really delicious. And, if you're into spicy food, you're going to love that product. The second thing that we do is we try to release about 40 to 50 new products a year. And so part of the discovery experience is that every time you come back to NatureBox, we're going to have a new product. And so, that sort of keeps it interesting and keeps it fun for the consumer. And then the third piece of the value proposition is variety. So at any given time, we have about 100 unique products available on the website. And that's everything from dried fruit to trail mix to popcorn to cookies and crackers, beef jerky, things like that. And so at any given time, there's just a huge breadth of selection that you can choose from.
And are you just serving an American customer base, or do you reach beyond the US?
Yeah, so today we sell to the US and Canada, and we really feel like two kind of thoughts on that. One is that the US is a huge market for snacking. $77 billion of snacks are sold in the US each year. So it's just a massive market opportunity, and we're just scratching the surface of that market opportunity. And then the second thing is we feel like every country has a unique palate. And so in order to win in another country, you really have to understand the taste preferences and profile of those consumers. And so we've just decided to focus our efforts on the US. And time will tell. Maybe in the future we'll sort of have the resources to focus on other markets, but right now it's really the US and Canada.
I was actually going to ask about even the kind of difference in palate across a country as big as America. You must kind of notice kind of regional preferences in terms of, or statewide preferences in terms of what people's favorite items are and what they go for in terms of their snacks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we notice regional preferences, age preferences, demographics, even things, and this is kind of the fun of being an e-commerce company, is that there's just a treasure trove of data. And so even things like what type of device you use to browse our website, we see, some slight differences in the types of products that you buy and even how you shop the website. And so, it's pretty interesting. It's always changing, and we're always also, trying to understand consumer preferences even better. But I think one thing is universal, that it doesn't matter where you live, consumers are trying to eat healthier. And so I think that's something that we've found pretty universally.
Vijay, perhaps I could ask for some input from you on this. Something that struck me was this the level of product innovation and this desire to always have new products within the range. How difficult is that to maintain? Is that something you see across a lot of food tech companies?
Oh, actually not. So in that sense, that's what kept me very intrigued about how NatureBox evolves over time. So, but with the variety comes the supply chain challenges. Coming from a supply chain background, I was always curious to learn how NatureBox works out its supply chain. So there are two important components to the value proposition that Guatam is talking about, and I'm sure our audience would like to learn about the two important dimensions, which is the product innovation. Do they do it in-house or work with partners, and also the actual manufacturing of these products? So how do they go about managing that sourcing side of managing this value chain? So these would be, I think, very critical elements from a value chain perspective for the value proposition, I felt.
Yeah, definitely. I think the sort of supply chain challenges around managing such a wide set of SKUs and also kind of an ever-changing set of SKUs are significant. But I think what's sort of the way that we've looked at it, we've done some things that are really unique, I think, in the landscape of food and consumer products. So the first thing that's probably not as unique today as it maybe was 10 or 20 years ago is we outsource all of the manufacturing. So we develop the product internally, but we don't manufacture any of the product. We use contract manufacturers. And So, that's something that's become a lot more popular and really a much more commonplace way of doing business today than it was in the past. The second thing that we've tried to do is really lower the friction or bar to work with a manufacturer. And so when you think of traditional consumer products, there's a lot of, requirements, be it packaging requirements or, storage requirements and things like that, that you get into when you're working with a contract manufacturer. And because we were a new business, and because we were selling direct to consumer, we didn't need a lot of the things that traditional consumer goods companies need when they're selling to retail. And so that includes, our packaging is different, right? It's, the point of purchase for us is the website. It's not the package on the retail shelf. And so that gave us a lot of flexibility to do things in a way that was much more streamlined, where each SKU could leverage the same, supply of packaging inventory or the same type of packaging and things like that. And then I'd say the third thing that we've tried to do is a lot of our innovation, comes from sort of a core set of partners. And so even though we're launching new SKUs all the time, that doesn't mean that every new SKU is a new project where we're going out and trying to find a new manufacturing partner. We're really leveraging that existing base of relationships that we have and trying to make them, as efficient as possible. And the way that we look at it is, if we work with you as a manufacturing partner and we produce 10 SKUs, 10 items, then it's really how do we make those 10 items as productive as possible. And that's how we think about new SKUs and innovation is the new SKUs take the place of old SKUs, right? And ideally, we're creating new SKUs that are more productive than some of our old SKUs. And so those are some of the things that we've done to try to manage the complexity. But I would say, it is a supply chain intensive business, and we're always learning and trying to improve.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, I thought so. So in essence, basically, you're trying to learn as much as you can from the consumers, from the consumer preferences, and doing the product development in close collaboration with your manufacturing partners. So while you're developing the products, maybe you're checking with your manufacturing partners whether they can deliver that product, yes or no, and then trying to get further with the development, I guess. Or maybe your manufacturing partners are kind of collaborative partners in the product development process itself, right? Otherwise, it could be like back and forth. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we could also talk about distribution. This is something you spoke about already, but if we could just maybe learn more about when you decided to change some of those channels that you were selling the product within, how that, what was the real jump off point? I know you said that from the start you always intended them to be in lots of different channels. When did you make those decisions to make the jump and kind of explore new avenues?
Yeah, so we made the decision, probably 3 years ago, and it was really a decision that we sort of got pushed into with customers. Customers would call us and say, hey, I've been buying online from you for a while, but I'd like to buy in my neighborhood store. Or, they would say, I used to buy the product, but for whatever reason, subscription didn't work for me. And so I'd like to buy, whenever I want. And, it would be great if that was in my neighborhood store. And so we sort of started thinking about that. And I think we also realized that we got to a place where the brand was very well known. So, a lot of American consumers, whether you've purchased NatureBox or not, have heard of the company. And so that sort of compelled us to take kind of a deeper look at, what would happen if we started to sell these products, outside of naturebox.com. And as with anything, we tend to test things sort of before we go, head on. And so we started testing the idea of selling NatureBox products within physical retail stores. And those tests were proving to be pretty compelling. And so, little by little, we kind of started spending more time on it, putting more resources in that direction. And, I think now we've seen that it's a really nice part of the business. It serves a different purpose than our direct business. And so, we continue to believe that what we do that's unique is direct to consumer. And so that's still the majority of what we do. But, it's not to say that there isn't a place for multi-channel, and sort of leveraging retail partners to kind of grow the brand awareness.
I think that's a really interesting point of allowing the brand to grow, and once you have that recognition, being able to change up the way that you distribute the product, because if you went too early in that respect, then it would just be another product on the shelf, whereas by your good timing, you're able to capitalize on the interest and intrigue of people being able to access the product in a new way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we think is sort of the future of a lot of direct to consumer businesses, right? Is being able to engage with the consumer both online and offline. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these companies sort of pushing into the offline world. From our standpoint, what we thought was unique for NatureBox and with our company is that there are 30,000 stores across the country that sell snacks, right? Or grocery stores, I should say. There's even more stores that sell snacks. And so, we sort of felt like that was just a huge opportunity that, even if you could be in 1,000 of those stores or a couple thousand of those stores, it could really open up a lot of opportunity for the brand.
Vijay, perhaps I could ask you about this kind of method of distribution and this innovation in that respect. Do you see this as a kind of necessity for a lot of food tech businesses?
Yes, thanks, Tom, for giving me this opportunity, because I think, as I said, I worked in this space to test a subscription model in the, and actually building a brand in the Netherlands. So one of the things I really, two things I realized at that time. One is that there is a lot of inertia in terms of getting your products into the channels that you would like. For example, the distribution channels you would like in the brick and mortar model. That's also why several people choose online, not necessarily because they want to really start with online, but because there's a lot of inertia to get your products onto the shelf. So you choose to go online. So I was just curious, when you have already established a brand online, would it become very easy? Are you more welcoming into these brick and mortar channels? I was just curious about that experience.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the beginning, there was a lot more sort of hesitation, or maybe hesitation isn't the right word, but curiosity, right? Of, how could this work, and, will it work? I think what's interesting is, as time has kind of shifted, and, you see a lot more of these sort of online brands starting to go offline. A lot of that sort of curiosity has changed. I think, folks have seen or better understand the potential and why you would take an online brand and extend the distribution offline. And so I think that that's changed. I think it's now much more of a typical conversation with, between a retailer and a brand. But I think what's different is that for an online brand, coming to retail, typically they've had a number of years or some amount of time that they've been actively building their brand awareness online. And so they're taking all of that awareness, all of that, potential demand into the offline space. And so I think that's a pretty unique selling proposition for a direct-to-consumer brand that a lot of traditional brands, traditional startup brands don't have, right? Because they're sort of, they haven't had the opportunity to kind of really build a brand in that way before they sit down with retail buyers. And so I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic of the conversation that's really part of the conversation today, whereas maybe a few years ago, it was a lot more curiosity of how could this work? And, is this a big risk that we're taking?
Yeah, thank you. So it was a very, very well answered, because I think that shows the experience that you guys have had on this journey and with the discussions. The follow-up question is also very practically experienced by me, is many online brands are not as big as NatureBox, but smaller level, having achieved a smaller level of success. And when they have finally managed to crack into the retail or other brick and mortar distribution channels, they experienced a lot of actually challenges, and some of them really had to go out of business. And the reason for that, the economics change completely, because when you go to a retail market, then a lot of costs are not in your control, margins are not in your control, and a lot of things are not in your control. When you're running an online business, most of the things are under your control, right, in that sense. So I was just curious how you are experiencing these dynamics of economics and managing the profitability and margins when you have this hybrid model, or when you move from an online to a hybrid model.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, so it definitely is a challenge because, as you mentioned, the different channels have sort of different expectations and different desires, and also there's just in the retail channel, there's a much more mature system of doing business that's been around for a long time, and so there's the retailer, distributor, et cetera. Brokers, all of whom are taking a piece of the pie. And so, it is a lot different than a direct business, which is, I think, a much simpler economic model. But I'd say probably the biggest sort of benefit of being in the retail channel really comes from the volume. And, in a business like ours, when you can grow volume on a specific item, specific SKU or specific ingredient, that enables you to do a lot of supply chain optimization. And so, I would say that the retail business, has some sort of upfront, upfront charges or fees that are different from a direct business. But at the same time, the volume that you get from a retail channel can really help optimize the supply chain for all channels.
All right. Thanks again. I think I knew that you would, I think we all would only justify volumes for going into the brick and mortar model. Then a follow-up question, which is, I think, a big dilemma for many entrepreneurs like yourself, is the volume versus image trade-off, right? So, for example, the further you move towards the traditional grocery, I think you might be, which is where the most volumes you could expect, which is where you could start losing or diluting your brand image from the perspective of the specialty brand the 1 million plus community members that you hold have this special feeling and connection towards that brand that possibly can get diluted if the channel choice is not appropriate or the retail partnerships are not appropriate. Do you see that as an interesting or an important factor for you to consider, or how do you address that dimension?
No, I think every channel, is unique, and there's a lot of differences with every single retailer, every single channel, whether it's online or offline. And so I think we've just taken an approach of trying to be creative and flexible, and really leverage channels for what they can provide, what unique value they can provide to the business. And also, we've realized that some channels just don't work for our business and don't provide us the economic model that we need. And so, we've either said no to those, or actively walked away from some of those, doing business in some of those channels. So I don't know that there's kind of a one-off, sort of one rule across all, but we definitely stay pretty cognizant of the trade-offs.
Thanks, Gautam. Very, very convincing and good answers. Thank you.
So my next two questions were going to be about supply chain and data, and I think you've already covered a lot of those aspects when you've spoke about the journey and your experience up until now. Perhaps you could, maybe I could rephrase them and ask you about the future. So how those elements will play out in perhaps this year. This is a good time to reflect on the opportunities that present themselves for this year, but also maybe beyond that, and where you see the company going in that respect.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing for us is, as I mentioned, we have the online side of our business has continued to evolve. You can now buy on a la carte basis or a subscription basis, and so we're continuing to just evolve the feature set there, and continue to deliver new delicious products for the consumer. And also, I think one of the things that we've noticed is that there's, especially given a lot of the diet trends today, keto, paleo, there's a lot of demand around specific verticals like that. And so I think you'll see us be push more towards some of those dietary verticals. And then the other thing that I mentioned earlier was our B2B channel, where we're selling to offices. So that's going to continue to be a big focus for us, and we have a lot of things that we've been preparing for and solidifying over the last 6 months, and so I think 2019 is going to be a year of greater focus there, and hopefully much more growth there.
And that makes a lot of sense to me in the B2B perspective of companies improving the well-being of their staff, and kind of, if they're keeping people off of junk food and mid-afternoon slumps by improving how they're snacking throughout the day, then there's going to be productivity benefits, I guess.
Exactly. Well, we hope so.
The final aspect we wanted to cover in terms of your business model was sustainability, and this is one of our 4 key pillars that we put within any business model that we help to develop or that we teach. Could you tell us a little bit about the sustainability elements within NatureBox and your products?
Sure. So, the company, as you can imagine, we've been from day one, the consumer has really pushed us towards what we can do from a sustainability standpoint relative to the supply chain of food. And so I think there's a lot of macro both issues and opportunities in food, and some of that we can impact, and some of it quite frankly we can't impact it at the stage that we're at. But where we can, the consumer has a loud sort of voice around making sure that we take sustainability into account. And it was sort of part of the mission, when we started the company. And so, I'd say the focus for us has been around key ingredients. A good example of that would be palm oil, where we made a shift years ago to being 100% sustainable. And then, the other kind of key direction or piece is around packaging materials, where as much as possible we try to be post-consumer use, and also just reduce the footprint of some of the packaging materials so that there's just less waste, generally speaking. And so I'd say those are kind of the two areas that we've been focused on, and we are certainly supportive of larger changes within the food ecosystem. There's a whole lot that we sort of see as potential opportunities, as we continue to scale and as things change in the sort of broader industry.
Thank you. Yeah, and Vijay, perhaps I could ask you, because this is a first for us in having a food tech business on the podcast, as opposed to the agri-tech companies we've been hearing from. The sustainability elements within a food tech model, do they tend to be consumer led, or how do you see those playing out?
I think I see them to be both consumer led and also sourcing led, as Gautam pointed out, because for a food tech kind of a business that deals with real products, sourcing happens to be a very big, major cost component, right? 50 to 60% of the total value of the product, or the total cost of the product, goes into the sourcing component, right? So I think sourcing sustainably is, in the medium to long run, always has a positive impact on the cost, basically, right? So that's what Gautam was pointing about. And I see that for a brand like NatureBox, at least that's my perspective, for a brand like NatureBox, the consumer-led sustainability dimension is more strong and more compelling, because there is only so much you can, as a marketing brand, there is only so much you can control the procurement side, the sourcing side. So on the consumer side, I see this, that helping people enjoy their healthy lifestyle, I think is a great sustainability element, because that's how we teach sustainability, right? It has to be an integral part of your core value proposition. It doesn't matter whether it is consumer led or the upstream, that is the sourcing or production led, I guess. So that's my take on. So when I was making notes of NatureBox, for me the sustainability element was helping people enjoy healthy eating, basically, right? So that's how I write it, and maybe Gautam can comment on that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Sustainability can sort of mean many things to different people. So certainly we think of kind of healthy eating as sustainable living. And so that's a kind of core part of the mission, and obviously that's kind of paramount to why we exist. And then on the side of that is, how do we be kind of a sustainable business, and be a contributing member of sort of society. And so I think there's kind of both elements of it, and we where possible, we want to have a positive impact, and so we try to align our business practices with what we think both our customer is right for our customer, and right for the kind of broader community that we operate in.
So finally, what we like to do is ask our guests about talent, and how they've grown their team, and maybe some of the lessons they've learned. Because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in the early stages of growing their company or their solution or whatever it might be. Could you tell us a little bit about talent development within within NatureBox, perhaps some of the lessons from the past and how you see it developing in the future?
Yeah, definitely. We from I think sort of the early days of the business tried to sort of make talent a central part of our effort and focus. And so I'd say, from the early days, we thought about it as my co-founder and I had certain things we were good at, certain things that we weren't good at, and really just gaps that we needed to fill. And so we thought about talent as how do we go and fill those gaps with people that we can really learn from and people that we'd really enjoy working with. And then over the years, as the company kind of evolved and changed, we had started really thinking about talent in some different ways. Same, ethos around sort of getting people into the company that we could learn from and that could be, just good members of the team and contribute positively to a good culture. But then the second thing is, as you grow a company, how do you provide opportunities for people to grow and learn in their own careers? And so I think that's been a bigger part of our focus, over the last few years, is really, not just sort of hiring for the gaps that you have today, but hiring high potential people that can continue to grow with the organization, and giving people that opportunity. And so, I'd say that's sort of probably the biggest shift. We've spent a lot of time in thinking around culture and just making sure that we create the type of culture that we want in a company, and continuing to evolve that as new people come in and also as the direction of the business changes. So it's definitely something that it's always a work in progress, and it's always something that we're actively trying to improve and and continue to develop.
Yeah, sure, great. We want to be respectful of your time, and I'm sure there's lots of pressing issues to get on with today and for 2019, of course. Vijay, perhaps I could just ask if there's any final questions or thoughts that you wanted to share and get any clarity on.
Yeah, I think related to talent, I have one question, and possibly I can give one thought for growth later on after that for Gautam. So with respect to talent, as we have seen, Tom, we were speaking to several agri-tech founders, and you could clearly see that most of their investments go towards the tech talent, not necessarily onto understanding the supply chains and understanding the business of the customers and so on and so forth. So I was just curious, how NatureBox sees the talent portfolio, and how well the whole team members, whether they're technical or from the nutrition or product development, how well they understand the whole game of the food supply chains. That's I think one of the questions that I just wanted to learn.
No, I mean, we try to create opportunities for everyone in the company, myself included, to learn about the industry and things that are changing in the industry. And so one of the things that we do, and we've been doing for probably about a year and a half, 2 years, is invite people from the outside to come and give a talk to the employees. And usually it's really interactive, but the idea is there's something that we can all learn about, and just learn from that person's experience. And so we definitely try to support that. And, I think we're fortunate to work in an industry that is changing, and so there's a lot going on, and some really creative, smart people creating change. And so we definitely encourage that and endorse it, and try to selfishly learn about the things that are changing around us. And so that's definitely part of our culture.
Great. So that's very nice to hear, encouraging for us as Agribusiness Academy. The final passing thought for growth could just be a passing thought which you can park, but still, I think I thought I could offer you something based on the conversation we have had. So you told us that, or you told in this podcast that you're focusing very much on the US and the Canadian market, where you understand the consumption behavior and all those things. But as a brand, as a brand and as a technology company, you have a lot of possibilities to offer for international markets. It need not have to be you going into these markets on your own, but possibly finding ways to leverage your brand and your technology into those localized supply chains, right? So did you ever think about that?
For us, we look at it as just a allocation of resources, and so there's just as with any startup, there's so much to do in a given day, and so we just have to kind of stay focused and really also constrain our area of focus so that we don't get distracted or we don't take on more than we can handle. And so I think that's really the rationale behind staying focused on the U.S. and Canada. It's not that we don't see the opportunity there or feel like there could be creative ways to kind of expand, but it's more just a need to stay focused and really force ourselves to focus on the opportunity right in front of us.
Sure. Yeah, makes very good sense. Thanks, Gautam.
Right. So I guess all that remains is for me to thank you for your time, Gautam, and where's the best place to find out more about you and the business? I guess naturebox.com, but how about
naturebox.com or LinkedIn, Twitter. My Twitter handle is gramblings, and then LinkedIn is just my I think linkedin.com/my first and last name, Guatam Gupta.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Vijay. Thank you as always for your inputs.
Thank you. Thanks, Gautam.
Find out more about our services at agribusiness.academy.